Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Buzzard's Nest podcast. I'm Buzz, your host, and today we're going to talk about old cartoons from your past when you were younger. Now, I had reached out to people in Facebook land and asked them what some of their favorites were. And let's see what we got here. I have Virginia, who stated Lost in Space is one of the ones she grew up with. In case Virginia didn't know, I dug up some facts on this. The show ran for 3 seasons, with 83 episodes airing between 1965 and 1968. The first season was filmed in black and white, and the second and third season were in color. And that's when I remember them, and then I started going, as I got older, backwards to revisit the old days. In 1962, the first appearance of the spacefaring Robinson family occurred in a comic book published by the Gold Key Comics. The Space Family Robinson, who were scientists aboard Earth's Space Station 1, are swept away in a cosmic storm in the comic's second issue. These Robinsons were scientists: Father Craig, Mother June, who also is a scientist, early teens Tim the son and Tam the daughter, along with her 2 pets, Clancy the dog and Yacker the parrot. Space Station 1 also boasted 2 space mobiles for ship-to-planet travel. The television, though, itself, Lost in Space, was launched 3 years after this comic book in 1965. And during its run on CBS and 20th Century Fox, they reached an agreement with Gold Key Comics that allowed the usage of the name Robinson on the TV show. In return, the comic was allowed to append its name title to sell off of cross-marketing to the Robinson family, Lost in Space, with the potential for the TV show to propel additional sales of the comic book. Now, if anybody watched this show really closely, along with another one that was called Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, the props and monsters were regularly recycled from Irwin Allen shows, which is the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. The props were cross-used between those shows, between monsters, the spaceships, and any other sub-designs. In fact, Lost in Space itself would reuse some of the models by either repainting them for the color days, actually turning them upside down and doing something different with them. And then once they did that, they would give them to the other show and vice versa. Let's see, what is the other instance I have here? One of the main props that was turned up between both shows was actually a clear round pen holder used as a control surface in the episode Derelict, turned up regularly throughout both the shows. Jason said he grew up with the Looney Tunes adventures. He sent me a picture of Bugs Bunny, so I'm hoping it's all Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes is an American animated series of comedy short films produced by Warner Brothers from 1930 to 1969, but still runs to current date. During the golden age of American animation, along its sister series, Merry Melodies, it was known for introducing such famous cartoon characters as Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig. We pretty much all know all these ones. All these characters together are called Looney Tunes. It's not the actual show, it's the comedy group, or the cartoon comedy group, Looney Tunes. The Looney Tunes series popularity was strengthened even more when the shorts began airing on network and syndicated television in the 1950s under various titles and formats. However, the Looney Tunes shorts were edited, removing scenes of violence, particularly suicidal gags, and scenes of characters doing dangerous stunts that impressionable viewers could easily imitate. Racial and ethnic caricatures, including stereotypical portrayals of African Americans, Mexicans, Jews, Native Americans, Asians, and Germans as Nazis. And they removed questionable vices, smoking cigarettes, ingesting pills, and drinking alcohol. So all the old ones were actually re-edited for modern television. And I don't even think you can find a hold of the ones that aren't edited. I think they're locked away in vaults. Lisa had stated Punky Brewster. I remember the show. I watched it a few times. It was the Silver Spoons alternative to some. Punky Brewster is an American sitcom about a young girl being raised by her foster parent. The show ran on NBC from September 16th, 1984, which would make me 14 at the time, to March 9th, 1986. And again in first-run syndication from October 30th, 1987 to May 27th, 1988. The series, which debuted on NBC, earned consistently low ratings, but the Punky Brewster character was a hit with younger children. Punky Brewster spawned an animated spin-off called It's Punky Brewster. The series featured the original cast voicing their respective characters. The cartoon was produced by Ruby Spears and aired on NBC from September 14th, 1985 to December 6th, 1986. Now I'll probably butcher this first name. Soleil Moonfry, Soleil Moonfry, played Punky Brewster and has since opened an organic specialty clothing shop for children, The Little Seed, in Los Angeles. She also hosts a blog and web series which focuses on children rearing and women's issues. In 2011, Fry released her first book, Happy Chaos, From Punky to Parroting, and My Perfectly Imperfect Adventures in Between. Fry is currently the host of Homemade Simple on the Oprah Winfrey Network. So that's a few for my write-ins. And for myself, I grew up on Saturday morning television like it was no tomorrow. It's what I lived for. And when I was doing my research, I found that back in the good old days, they used to post the upcoming Saturday morning cartoons in the back of comic books. Again, another tie into my comic books. I actually have printed out the old ads. I'm trying to figure out the date on this one. Oh, this one's from 1980. NBC's Saturday morning lineup. And I love this one. The Godzilla Dynamite Hour. Used to love Godzilla in the movie form, the cartoon form. Then after that was the Flintstones Comedy Hour. And their new Space Wars series, Space Stars series, included Space Ghost, Astro and the Space Dogs, Teen Force, the Herculoids. I used to watch that one a lot. I liked that. I'd actually like to see that come back. The Jetsons, and then after that was the Daffy Duck Show. And then the headline at the bottom, plus fabulous play-along fun, riddles, games, drawings, dancing, even outer space. Be on the lookout for Drawing Power, October 11th. And my other ad here is for ABC. I do not have a date for this one. There's no date. But it used to be the World's Greatest Super Friends. Yes, the World's Greatest Super Friends. Superman, Batman, the Wonder Twins. All new Plastic Man. Then Mighty Man and Yuck. If anybody remembers Mighty Man and Yuck, Yuck was a giant dog. And it was so hideously ugly that its doghouse was on it like a helmet. So you couldn't see his face. All you seen were eyes. And Mighty Man was just a strong man in a close to Superman costume. I don't remember this one, Rickety Rocket. But I do remember Fang Face. I liked that one. Then again, these guys are still running Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. Then Spider-Woman, the all brand new show. I can remember where Saturday morning cartoons was when they would change the lineup at 8 p.m. They would have this little mini show to get you all cranked up for what's new and upcoming with little shorts on the cartoons that were coming up. And you were just anxious to get up that morning to watch everything. I remember cartoon called Dungeons and Dragons, where these 4 or 5 kids rode a roller coaster and ended up being swept into the Dungeon and Dragons land. I remember that ran for a little while. I liked that one. I watched the Smurfs, but I never got into it. I think my middle brother watched them. So I began looking up a few things, and I'm going to try to switch over to my other program real quick. Let's see here. Now, a lot of this I'm just learning myself on Saturday morning cartoons. I thought I watched like everything when I was younger. At least I had knowledge of it. I didn't see every single episode. Let's see. Early morning cartoons were actually started in the 1960s. And I guess some cartoons were played during prime time. And some during like movies, the old black and whites. And what they did was took all those cartoons and put them in a time slot for Saturday mornings for kids. The usual time slot, and it was created this way and it maintained during the Saturday morning cartoons, was 8 a.m. till noon. And the newer cartoons that were designed mainly for Saturday mornings in the 1960s brought on the boom of the superhero cartoons, the 60s through the 80s. Especially the 80s, that's when comic books themselves and superheroes had its biggest hit. That's when comic books were worth the most, and a lot of people were getting into them in the 80s to about 90s. But the comic books were adapted for Saturday morning cartoons, and some of the main stars were Superman, Aquaman, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and I remember all those. Then the original type of superhero, Space Ghost, the Herculoids, Birdman, and Galaxy Trio, which I never heard of Galaxy Trio. I might have to look that up just to see if I can remind myself. Then there were parodies made of those superheroes. Underdog, the Super Six, another one I never heard of, George of the Jungle, and they were based along that. That was the biggies. The second biggies of the early morning cartoons were the Beatles, the Jackson 5, and the Osmonds. I know the Beatles had one. I know the Jackson 5 had one. I've never seen the Osmond one. Then other kickoffs along those lines, the Archies, Josie and the Pussycats. Then we went into, for kids, Saturday mornings, live action. H.R. Puffin stuff, I watched that. Sigmund and Sea Monster, I've seen that. And if you remember them, the Hanna-Barberas, the Banana Splits. I remember that big time. The 70s brought in another line of superheroes. I should take that back. Another type of Saturday morning cartoon. It was live action primetime series that were made into cartoons. Star Trek, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, Partridge Family, and the Dukes of Hazzard. They were all adapted to a cartoon basis. Other adaptations were from books and movies that were popular with kids. Tarzan, Planet of the Apes, Lassie, Godzilla, and Zorro. Then brought in the 80s themselves, and that was a whole other twisted fate. That's when you begin getting the Smurfs, which was a Belgian comic strip. They were brought to the United States. This 80s kick off the My Little Pony craze. Monchichis, anybody remember those? My little brother had one of those. I think we've had it for the longest time. I don't know where it is. Trollkins and Snorks. Another 80s creation was the 80s vibe and sound beginning of cartoons called Gem and Holograms, which is, I heard, I might be wrong, it's supposed to become a live action movie sometime this year or next year. I hope they kill that off, that idea off, but that's just me. Now this is the part that's extremely new to me that I didn't know of. In the late 60s, there was a group created called the Action for Children's Television, ACT. They voiced concerns about the presentation of commercialism, violence, antisocial attitudes, and stereotypes presented in Saturday morning cartoons. By the 1970s, these groups exercised enough influence that the television networks felt compelled to lay down more stringent content rules for animation houses. By 1978, the Federal Trade Commission was openly considering a ban on all advertising during television programs targeting preschoolers, and severe restrictions on other children's programming advertising, which has effectively killed off the format. I can see why they want to ban commercialism, because October, November, December, that's when you begin getting hit hard with those commercials for toys, or be right before Christmas time, and they pounded the heck out of you with toys. And yes, I was the kid that was saying, oh, I want that, especially if it was a monster robot. I want that. I need that. This ACT group, Action for Television, Action for Children's Television, helped create Schoolhouse Rock to produce education into the Saturday morning cartoons. Now, what killed Saturday morning cartoons was a few things. The rise of first-run syndicated animated programs. If they moved out of that Saturday morning time slot, they weren't looked at by ACT as much. That gave us the creation of after-school cartoons, and that's where we get G.I. Joe, the Transformers, Voltron, Thundercats, and He-Man. I know all of those I watched. Voltron not as much, but Thundercats, my middle brother, loved those ones. I like the He-Man ones. Within that group also you get DuckTales, Tiny Toons, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were all created for that time slot for after-school weekdays. That way they were avoided by ACT. So a lot of people began putting money towards that area instead of Saturday morning cartoons. Second reason, blends in with first, the increased regulation of children's programming. A lot of children's programming had to become educational and informational, not just blind gobbledygook to take your mind off things. It had to be educational. The rise of cable television, because of television channels that were like Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, the Cartoon Network, you could just turn to those and get your cartoons, child programming, anytime you wanted it. So why just Saturday? You could have those. The home video service, beta, VCR, because you could buy a tape, put it in, let the kid watch it, let us watch it. There was no reason to have that time slot. People were spending more money buying to own than waiting for Saturday to come along. And the next reason, the beginning of the 80s was also the beginning of the video game craze. A lot of children were not sitting in front of television. They were sitting on television playing video games, and ACT couldn't touch that. But those are things I didn't know. I didn't know there was such a push to kill Saturday morning cartoons by ACT. So those cartoons we used to watch in the mornings are gone, and I don't think there will be any other generation that gets up and that's the only time they can watch it. They could switch to any other channel and have it whenever they want. Pay-per-view, Netflix, any given time. So that's about all I had for cartoons at this time. But it was great. It was great having everybody's input. I appreciate it. Frank, if you're listening, I don't smell anything right now, so we're good. If nobody gets that, refer back to the YouTube videos that we produce for the Buzzard's Nest podcast. Here, this is where I'm going to stop the Saturday morning cartoon talk, and I want to get on to another subject here, but we're going to take a little intermission break. Okay, we're back. I thank everybody for the moment break, even though to you guys it seems like a pause, and we're back. All right, I have a pressing subject I want to talk to everybody about and hopefully educate you guys of what what I have to go through for the podcast and the YouTube channel. It might be rough. I don't mean to be rude, but it's something I could talk about. Yeah, I know. For the podcast, I'm limited on the free end of what I can do for so many hours of download and for bandwidth. I can upgrade to a pay one. I probably will. If I can get more listeners, I can open up the podcast to commercials. Before, after. Usually it's just sponsors that pay only a couple bucks. It's not much to do what's called a 30-second or 15-second pre or after roll, where I talk about them for a little bit. It comes out of me. It's not their pre-designed stuff. It's the way I design it, but they give me a little monetary bump for doing so. But I have to have 100 listeners. Anybody that does listen, I ask just that you maybe like the Facebook page, share it. I know that going on Podbean, you have to sign up for an account and put your likes there. But if you did it on Facebook and help me get more listeners by free advertising, that would help me greatly. And the comments are greatly appreciated. As you see, we created this podcast off of a few people's inputs on Saturday morning cartoons, and I'd like to do that again on many other subjects. I do have an interview I'm working on coming up here soon, and if anybody else would like to, it would be no money asked. All I ask is you cross-reference the podcast on your Facebook page or anywhere else, Twitter, anything you do. Now, that would help me along, and if those kept growing, the money kept coming in, anything gained monetarily will be added to the value of the podcast or the YouTube channel. None of it's going to go into my personal bank account. Everything's going to be used for improvements, maybe better editing software. I'm using free stuff right now. It's not too bad. I enjoy it, and it's easy for me to use, and it's powerful. But we do need things like soundproofing around my windows, because I have to edit around some things that bleeds through the windows. Ambulance coming by. I try to record late at night so you don't hear every neighbor cutting their grass, running a weed whacker. The local fire station sirens, I have to edit all that out. Depending on what the night produces, I could be up editing longer than I am actually talking on the show. And then with the YouTube, they've become very, very strict with who gets commercialism, who gets paid, and why. Their new rule now, as of I think it was January of 2017, the beginning of this year, you have to have 10,000 views before they'll put you up for review to be considered for commercials. Now, I know that's a long stretch. It's not going to happen today, tomorrow, within 3 months. But if you like and share those videos, that would help greatly. That'll help draw people in to view them. I got to get more creative with some of the videos. I don't want to get in trendy topics or trendy things. I'm not playing with a fidget spinner. I got two, but I ain't going to record myself playing with a fidget spinner. And they have to be family oriented. So I don't say freely some of the words that I say here, but I don't cuss that much here either. But a like and a share and a comment would help greatly. Greatly appreciate. It would help me out more than I can ever explain to you. More subscribers would be nice, but views are always better. Random views from anywhere, anything, by anything, on any format that you want is always greatly appreciated. And again, if that limited money from YouTube comes in, it again will go into upgrading the podcast, upgrading video. We're going to start playing with a camera that is outdoors action camera and try to get some stuff. And on this one, I'm going to leave in some of the background noise so you can hear it, what I usually get involved with. I got this really nice office chair that's comfortable. It's great for my back, except for the armrests can change angles, and there's no lock on them. So every once in a while, you'll hear this. And I edit those out too. And there's no way to lock this stupid thing, but I usually bump it and it clicks. But please, if everybody could like, share, comment. Your comments, whether they're, don't have to kiss my ass. If you like it, tell me. If you don't like it, tell me why. Constructive criticism is always welcome on either of these formats. It's greatly appreciated. And if you want me to talk about a subject, let me know. If you would like to join in on the podcast, I now have mobile equipment to do that and edit with. If you have something you want to discuss, I mean, we don't have the 100 listeners yet, but maybe you and what you have to talk about with me might help push that along. So if you do, just contact the Facebook page, Buzzard's Nest Podcast on Facebook. Twitter, Buzz Nest Pod on Twitter. We're right there. Email, Buzzard, Buzzard, 2721 at gmail.com. I'm welcome to it. I want to hear it from everybody. I don't want to sound like a beggar, but I'm there. Help me grow. All right, people. I thank you very much. And if anybody has any input on the bump music, the music that we have at the beginning, let me know if you like or dislike, because I've been changing it up, but I make that here. That's all my design and doing. So let me know if you like it or not. Give me your input. Come on, people. Thank you very much. See y'all later. Have a great week.